More than £48 billion in new taxes for what Labour say is a radical and responsible plan for Britain. There'll be a new 50p top rate of income tax and a hike in corporation tax. Tuition fees will be axed and there'll be more cash for schools, childcare and the NHS.
Our proposals are of hope for the many all over this country, and I'm very proud to present our manifesto for the many, not the few. Thank you very much.
We'll be looking at whether the sums add up, and we'll hear from voters in a Labour target seat. Also tonight, detectives will not stop looking for Keith Bennett, despite the death of the Moors murderer Ian Brady. And increases in clothing, energy and food prices force inflation to a near four-year high.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn today unveiled his Red Book, a manifesto to tax and spend his way to power. Mr Corbyn said it was a radical plan offering real change for everyone, not just the elite few. Many of the pledges, like bringing back tuition fees and nationalisation, had already been leaked, but we didn't know how Labour planned to pay for it. Mr Corbyn said his spending commitments will be funded mainly by higher corporation tax and more income tax for the better off. Excuse me. But do the sums actually add up? Here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
Red bus, red tie, red leader. Not so little red book. It's Labour's brand new manifesto.
It's not a pantomime.
And our next Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn.
Here at Bradford University, you'd have been forgiven for thinking a slightly ageing rock star had taken to the stage. My goodness, they loved his message of taxing the rich to pay for better public services and nationalising energy, rail, post and water.
Opinion is changing and it's moving towards Labour. Because people want a country run for the benefit of the many, not the few. For the last 7 years, our people have lived through the opposite. A Britain for the rich and the elite and the vested interests.
Now 2 pledges brought the house down.
Labour will scrap tuition fees, lifting the debt. Labour will take our railways back into public ownership and put passengers first.
Of course, most of this was leaked last week. What was new was the numbers. Now, Labour's planning a massive £48.6 billion spending spree to improve public services, and that would be funded by £48.6 billion of additional taxes on the rich and on companies. The big cost would be £11.2 billion a year for abolishing student fees, £7.1 billion for health and for social care for the elderly, £6.3 billion a year more for schools, and £5.3 billion for childcare. Where would all the money come from? Well, Labour says there'd be £19.4 billion from higher corporation tax on businesses, £6.4 billion from levying a 45% income tax rate on those earning £80,000 a year or more, and a 50% rate on those earning upwards of £123,000. There'd be £5.6 billion from a tax on city deals and £1.3 billion from an excessive pay levy on firms like Goldman Sachs and Arsenal Football Club, which pay millions to their top people. But even after he asks 1.3 million taxpayers to pay more, his plans would increase the national debt by hundreds of billions of pounds.
Now, people do worry about borrowing. You've set out how much you expect to increase taxes, but you haven't said how much you're going to borrow every year additionally.
We will set that out, but this government has actually borrowed more in the last 7 years than all Labour governments combined in history.
The great fear of your predecessors as Labour leader was that if you put up taxes for companies, if you put up taxes for the rich, they'll move abroad, and that will mean jobs will move abroad and you won't get the tax revenues.
Well, of course we don't want people to move their operations abroad. We want people to be investing here. We want jobs to be created here. This is, after all, a country that is a very big market, 65 million people.
You wouldn't say that you want immigration numbers to come down. Why not?
Freedom of movement ends when we leave the European Union. Therefore, future migration to Britain will be based on economic needs and family reunion. I don't think it's a good idea to pledge numbers.
So no lack of confidence in him here, and more widely his policies certainly seem popular. But will the country as a whole learn to love and trust him? Robert Peston, ITV News in Bradford.
Well, the leaders of the Conservatives, Lib Dems and SNP ripped into many of Labour's manifesto pledges today, condemning them as nonsensical, damaging and pointless.
You can only fund our National Health Service, you can only have the funding that we've made available in relation to childcare if you've got that strong economy. What we see from Labour's proposals today, as I say, is that they don't add up, and their nonsensical economic policies would mean that actually it was ordinary working families who would pay the price of Labour's coalition of chaos.
It's interesting, this is the day that the Labour Party announced its manifesto, but several weeks ago it announced that whatever manifesto it had would be utterly and totally irrelevant. The moment that Jeremy Corbyn led his MPs through the same lobby with UKIP and the Conservatives for the most extreme version of Brexit, he condemned his manifesto to being utterly pointless, because we need to have a vision for a better Britain.
Many of the policies in Labour's manifesto will seem very familiar in Scotland. Free tuition, an end to the bedroom tax, climate change targets. The SNP government has already delivered all of them in Scotland.
So that is what the politicians think. But of course, it's the reaction of the voters that really counts. And if Labour want to win, they'll need to take a string of marginal seats like Weaver Vale. The constituency covers the northern part of Cheshire West and Chester. Once a Labour safe seat, it was narrowly won by the Conservatives in 2010 and again in 2015. It is a key marginal seat and one of Labour's big targets. Our correspondent Martin Geisler heard what matters to voters there.
If Labour are to make an impact in this election, their policies have to impress people in places like Weaver Vale. Just a very slight swing here would win them the seat. And voters seem to like what they heard from Jeremy Corbyn today. We started with his plans to raise tax for high earners.
I agree with that entirely. And I'm not badly off, but I would pay more as well.
I'm entirely in favour of it. Tax the rich and give the benefits to those that are in need.
Nationalising railways, water, energy companies, is that a good idea?
I think it is, yes. Get them back on board and stop big cats making a lot of money.
I'm on a zero-hour contract.
He wants to scrap them. Would you be in favour of that?
Yes, I would.
It would be better for you?
Oh yeah, it'd be loads better for me. It'd be better for everyone.
Labour's manifesto is built on big tax hikes for big business. Robert's Bakery is a major employer here with 900 staff and an annual wage bill of £33 million. Management say a proposed 7% hike in corporation tax would seriously hamper their growth.
Businesses rely on their profits to be invested back into them, and without those profits businesses can't grow and thrive. So a big jump by 7% to 26% is a huge rise, and I think that's going to be unaffordable for good investment in British industry.
But the workforce were more impressed, not least with talk of a hike in the living wage.
Everything else is going up, so I think that the wage should go up also.
The rich seem to be getting richer, the poor seem to be going worse.
And you think he's the man to change that?
If he keeps to his promises.
Labour's policies went down well with virtually everyone we spoke to today, but the party still has a problem.
Some of the ideas are good, not all of them, some of them. But Corbyn, absolutely not. He's another Trump.
If Labour can trump personality with policy, they may be able to prove their doubters wrong. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Northwich.
Well, our political editor Robert Peston joins me now. So what's your assessment then of the manifesto?
Well, the thing that struck me is, in a way, it's a cannier programme from, a Labour leader who's supposed to be so principled than one might have expected. Why do I say that? Well, let's look at health. Actually, the amount they're putting into the health service is not a colossal amount. I wouldn't be surprised if the Tories, when they announced their manifesto, matched the increased spending or indeed outbid them on that. But Labour takes for granted that voters think that the health service is safer in their hands. Similarly, I had a bit of a set to with him about why he wasn't ending the current government's benefits freeze. He claimed he was. In fact, the manifesto is clear that he's not. But again, voters think that if they want higher benefits, they'll get them from Labour. What is he doing? He's putting the money into student fees, very, very popular, nationalising rail. Very popular. These are populist policies. They're not just straightforwardly principled left-wing policies.
OK, Robert, thank you. Plaid Cymru also launched its manifesto today, with its leader warning voters not to hand the Conservatives a blank cheque. Leanne Wood unveiled plans to modernise Wales' creaking infrastructure, building new schools, hospitals, roads and railways.
We rally behind something which is much bigger than a manifesto. What we have today is an action plan. It shows where we are, what Plaid Cymru will do about whatever problem we face, and where we can be. It's a forward-looking programme which guarantees that Plaid Cymru will defend Wales.
And Leanne Wood is taking part in the ITV News Leaders Debate. That's on Thursday night on ITV at 8 o'clock. OK, let's move on to other news now. The body of the murderer Ian Brady will not be released until the coroner is assured his ashes will not be placed on Saddleworth Moor. He said it would be offensive if they were scattered where his child victims had been buried. The family of Keith Bennett, whose body has never been found, say they will not rest until they bring him home. Damon Green reports.
What he did in life will never be forgiven or forgotten. A clever, arrogant man, psychiatrists decided had no feelings at all for his victims or their families. Few will mourn his death, but there are some who will have cause to regret that Ian Brady goes to his grave having never told where he buried this little boy. His solicitor, who saw him yesterday just hours before his death, says he believes if he ever knew, his client simply couldn't remember.
In the 1980s, he did seek to cooperate as fully as he could at that stage, and it didn't, unfortunately, reveal the whereabouts of the one body that hasn't been found.
Keith Bennett's mother, Winnie, spent the last years of her life hoping that fresh information, a fresh search, would reveal his last resting place, and she died without ever finding the son she lost. Her family are convinced Ian Brady could have helped and chose not to.
It certainly isn't the end that Ian Brady's died. The fight will continue for Winnie, in Winnie's memory, for Alan Bennett and his family.
Saddleworth Moor has been searched and searched again, officially and unofficially, but police insist the investigation is not over. While we are not actively searching Saddleworth Moor, they say Greater Manchester Police will never close this case. Brady's death does not change that. The brother of one of Brady's other victims says all those who lost loved ones just want Keith's body to be found.
I wish I could win that lottery, me, because I put a team together, a proper team myself, to go up, professionals, you know, to go up and do a proper search of that area, what they've already covered, because I think he's been missed.
A coroner heard today that Ian Brady's feeding tube was removed in hospital 5 days ago, that he retained capacity throughout his last days, but no word on where Keith was hidden, and this bleak landscape keeps his secret. Ian Brady was pronounced dead at 6:02 yesterday evening. Having lived 50 years of life, his victims were denied. A coroner observed today that emotions are running high in Manchester and refused to sanction the release of his body until he'd received an assurance his ashes would not be scattered in this place, not here on Saddleworth Moor. This moor, this view, are the only grave and the only memorial that Keith Bennett has ever had.
Damon Green, thank you. The cost of living has jumped to its highest level for almost 4 years. Inflation rose again last month and is now outstripping wages. It was fuelled by higher clothing and electricity costs. Our business editor Joel Hills reports from Hastings.
Hi now. All right. Yeah. Rising inflation hurts the poorest the most, and on the Downs Farm estate, some people are struggling to feed themselves.
We've got some cakes, some donuts, and we've got some pasties.
This food is past its sell-by date, but supermarket cast-offs are in demand.
And as we know, council tax...
Susie is in full-time work, but feeling poorer. She helps run this community food bank.
We probably deliver to about 60 houses a week.
Well, if you didn't offer this service, what would happen to the people that you support here, do you think?
People
Would they not eat?
They wouldn't eat, no. No, because where's the food going to come from unless they're going to steal it?
The headline rate of inflation rose to 2.7% in April, the highest level since July 2013. By contrast, average pay is rising at 2.2%. Inflation was pushed higher last month due to a sharp increase in the price of airfares, electricity bills and clothing. Prices are rising faster than pay in large part because of Brexit. The full impact of the fall in the pound is now being felt. Bank of England predicts that the hit to living standards will be short-lived and less severe than the one Britain experienced just a few years ago during the recession. But the Resolution Foundation calculates that for around 5 million households, the squeeze will be even worse as the benefits cuts that George Osborne announced in 2015 start to bite. Brexit has come at a price, but some feel it's one that's well worth paying. There are no regrets on Hastings Beach, where cuttlefish season is in full swing.
80% of our fish is export, so effectively a weak pound is good for us, but the pound's rallied a bit, so we're not quite so well off. The weaker the pound, the better it is.
He's upbeat, but the average person in Britain is unlikely to be. We're heading to the polls at the very moment that living standards are beginning to fall. Joel Hills, ITV News in Hastings.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, Donald Trump defends sharing what he calls facts rather than secrets with the Russians. And the 38 million pieces of plastic found on the world's most polluted island. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Hello and welcome back. President Trump has hit back against claims he shared classified information with Russia, insisting he has every right to pass on anything he sees fit. The allegations emerged after a meeting last week between the president and senior Russians on fighting so-called Islamic State. Here's our Washington correspondent, Robert Moore.
Of all the sensational headlines from the early Trump presidency, today's may be the most damaging.
Spilling secrets, the president accused of giving highly classified information to the Russians in the Oval Office.
It all stems from this meeting last week between Trump and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and Ambassador Kislyak. The president giving them highly sensitive information about a terrorism threat. In the process, he may have jeopardized the source, reportedly a valued asset of a foreign intelligence service. It led to a frantic effort to contain the damage, this denial coming from America's national security advisor.
At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed, and the president did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known.
Some bad things came out today, those classified, the word classified.
Adding to the sense of outrage is how Trump on the campaign trail repeatedly accused Hillary Clinton of mishandling American secrets.
We can't have someone in the Oval Office who doesn't understand the meaning of the word confidential or classified.
I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
Key figures in Congress say they are deeply alarmed.
If our allies abroad can't trust us to keep sensitive information close to the vest, they may no longer share it with us.
The issue that Trump raised was an extremist plot to bring down airliners with explosives built into laptops. Counter-terrorism officials deeply worried about a mid-air bomb like this one. Hence the source of the intelligence is so vital to protect.
Mr. President, did you share classified intelligence information with the Russians?
Even as Trump gave no reaction to that question, he is demanding those who leaked the story are pursued. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Well, the news now, and the family of PC Yvonne Fletcher say they are deeply disappointed. A man arrested over her murder will not be prosecuted. PC Fletcher was killed during a demonstration outside the Libyan embassy in 1984. Key evidence relating to the suspect cannot be used in court for national security reasons. Workers at 3 rail companies will stage 24-hour strikes on the 30th of May. RMT members at Southern Railway, Merseyrail and Arriva Rail North are protesting over staffing issues and driver-only trains. And the Duke of Cambridge has been visiting young cancer patients at one of the country's leading hospitals. On his tour at the Royal Marsden, Prince William joined an art lesson for children with serious illnesses. And finally tonight, stark evidence, if it were needed, of the plague of plastic waste engulfing our natural environment. Scientists have found 38 million pieces of rubbish washed up on a tiny, remote and uninhabited Pacific island, as Sally Lockwood reports.
It should be paradise, but it's been ruined by plastic. Henderson Island is uninhabited, yet it has the highest density of plastic rubbish on Earth. And if you think this looks bad, around 2/3 of the island's rubbish is buried beneath the sand. One of the area's leading conservationists estimates this remote spot is now polluted by 38 million pieces of plastic.
It takes 8 days to get there. It's a huge privilege to go somewhere that so few people have been, and then suddenly you actually see just how much plastic and human impact that has reached this place. And one of the images that always stuck in my mind was of a hermit crab walking past using one of the little film containers that camera films used to come in as its shell.
Henderson Island is a British territory in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's located about halfway between New Zealand and Chile and is recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But it's in the heart of the South Pacific Gyre, an ocean current known for catching and holding plastic debris. If you ever wonder where your discarded everyday plastic ends up, this is the crude reality, and it's killing the island's wildlife. What should be a perfectly untouched corner of the Earth is a perfect picture of how we're failing the planet. Sally Lockwood, ITV News.
And that is all for now. Tom Bradby will be here with news at 10, but from me and all the team here, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.